What I'm going to talk about is Maslow's hierarchy of needs in financial terms. So I hope everyone's familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If not, if nothing else, hopefully you'll come away with a better understanding of Maslow at the end of this. But to keep it straightforward, what I like to see when I think about Maslow from a financial perspective, he's all about the expenses. I mean, Maslow talks about the needs, and he talks about these needs can really be converted into the core expenses to survive and live, and as you go through different levels and as we evolve as humans. So the basic physiological needs are what you would think of. So I have what I like to call Harabin's hierarchy of finances. And what that is more about is how do we meet those needs? Maslow did the easy part. He defined them. He told us what they are, but he didn't tell us how do we pay for them. So, I mean, so this is what we're going to talk a little bit about is not so much where you can find the money that you need to pay for these different aspects and to address these different areas. So the first part, when we talk about the physiological needs, and talk about people as they evolve in their financial evolution, there's a large population, 22% of the population is unbanked. So when you talk about they're really the only methods of paying for anything are via cash, money order, hard goods, cash on hand. So ironically, this group actually pays the least in taxes, but they can become trapped in here and have a hardest time climbing out because everything, it costs them more. Even though they're at the lowest level, everything is more expensive because of where they live and what they do and those aspects. So this group, for the most part, their insurance and their basic needs cost more than what they cost everyone else, which is just ironic. So evolving up the level a little bit, the next level, we talk about the safety needs, and that's personal security, health, property, employment. So this is where we're really talking about the basic income and additional expenses that Maslow's talking about. We can kind of get a little bit above that poverty line and just really trying to move on and do what you need to do. So for me, and from the hierarchy perspective of financial, credit score is king. And this is where a lot of people miss out and lose. That credit score doesn't just impact loans. It determines your costs of pretty much everything going forward. So when we talk about this next level of safety needs, from a financial perspective, it's about where you're starting to get into basic banking, you're starting to get in hard assets. So whether it's your evolution, when you're evolving even as a teenager and your kids, if you think about some of your kids, where do they start? When do they go? When do they start to develop their credit score? When do they start to go in and have a bank account? When do they do these things? The earlier you do these and the more you maintain and manage them, the better they become and the easier it is to move up that hierarchy and scale. So that's why I kind of help people talk about and go through. Credit score is a huge driver of insurance. And that's on an annual basis, on a 6-month basis, on not just your auto, your home, everything that you buy from an insurance perspective, heavily impacted by credit score. So is where you can live, how much security deposit you put down, how much you pay in your utilities. Do you need to put a security on utilities? You could see how people get trapped by not managing their credit score. So key, from a financial perspective, credit score, credit score, credit score. If nothing else, pay your basic bills every month, minimum payments, and that will help move you along. Moving away and then moving up to the next level, we get to love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. From an expenses perspective, I like to think of this. I like to think that Maslow's talking about expenses that are driven by values. And they're based on your values as to where you're going to go to. As you start to evolve, this is the value expenses and these aspects. To me, this is the big three. This is where you're able to, this is what we'll later talk about becomes the tipping point. When you can master this area, it actually gets easier and easier as you move up your finances. Until you master this area, this is kind of what keeps you stuck in that area, in a level. So first of all, there's the insurance. A huge aspect of people's monthly expenses and goes through tends to be their insurance of all kinds. When you factor them all together, health insurance, life insurance, auto, home, everything that you have. And what insurance does is it manages that cash flow. That's all it does. It takes away those spikes and those valleys. Without insurance, that's how you get trapped at some of these lower levels. As you start to have enough of it, you can weather whatever storm they throw at you. So that's a form of it. And what insurance does is it removes the risks. On the opposite side, you have debt. And what debt does is increase the risk, but it also allows you the leverage to go out and manipulate cash, to manipulate without needing to use cash, to be able to expand and grow where you're growing. So insurance and debt go hand in hand as far as offsetting each other and being able to really grow and go beyond the tipping point. The final part of the big three, the middle piece of it all, is your taxes. And although no one likes paying taxes, and you need to factor taxes into everything you do, ironically, taxes aren't as big an impact to most people as insurance and debt would be in those three cases. The worst case scenario, when you're paying a lot in taxes, is because you're making a ton of money, and that's a first world problem that people usually don't like to have. So when you're going in, but there is ways to factor in taxes into everything you do, from insurances, from investments, from all those aspects. And it should definitely be taken in because it's a big chunk. But of the big three, it's actually the least important of the big three. Moving on, we get to what Maslow talks about is esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition. What I like to phrase this, I guess, would be more of what we chose a visual outside material success. And material success from a financial perspective, and what I like to talk about, that becomes your tax deferred investments. That's where you're really going on and looking at pensions, your IRA, 401k, annuities, some of the tax deferred pieces. Now, with this and with anything in Maslow and what he teaches us and walks through, and from a financial perspective, decisions are all based on personal values. There is no right or wrong. I mean, if you prefer fancy cars and you prefer all of these, to spend the money on those kind of things versus the freedom of stop trading time for dollars, that's your choice. Everyone has those choices in those aspects. But what we're really talking about is getting into the next level. Once you've gotten over the big three, this is where most people should be spending their time and effort. And you can start to use these instruments actually to go and cover paying for things below. And, if we ever got together and talk about, I can explain to you how you could do that, to use these instruments to actually cover some of the insurance costs and the other factors. And then finally, there's what's really actual success. And actual success is what Maslow says everyone should and needs to strive for. When you stop striving for this, you're dead. And it's the ability to become all that one can be. And then from a financial perspective, what we talk about is active investments. Now, this is the smallest percent of the population that actually gets here, manages this, has a professional run this and do these things. And the simple fact is money makes money. So actual investments are the self-actualization of active investments are the self-actualization of financial of someone's financial perspective. So if you take the proper steps, you get here. It's just a matter of taking those steps to get you to that point. So when we review them side by side to kind of really look at it, physiological, it's all about, cash. You need to have a certain amount of cash reserves on hand. You need to improve your credit score, look at your banking and those aspects. And the cash on hand is to pay for your physiological needs, food, shelter. Stuff's not going to pay for itself. It's got to be paid for each month. And we're really seeing that with the coronavirus and what's impacted. And then the taxes and insurance come in and allow you to help assure that those things are covered, everything below. And then you can get into your tax deferred, and then you get into your active investments. So that's kind of how it stacks and racks next to Maslow's hierarchy of need. But getting to the most important factor of this is most people are able to, and the biggest percentage of the population, that's where they get hung up, the tipping point, and what I call the tipping point, where those big three come in. Once you've gotten over that cash flow hump, it really does get easier. It is a bell curve. And that's where I focus my time and attention is to really help people to understand that big three, to optimize that big three, and to get over the hump. Make life easy, make life a little bit easier. Relax. So that's kind of really what it's all about from my perspective. So, you know, if you need help getting past that tipping point to see what you can do, to learn, I mean, I'm here to educate people on insurance. I'm a CPA, so I can talk to you about the tax factors, you know, and again, we don't do anything once you're over that tipping point. You know, there's people on our team that can help you with that. But to help people get over that tipping point, that's what I'm here and that's what I'm about. So any questions? Anyone have any input?
That was great, Dennis. Thanks. I like the way you kind of made that analogy or expressed the hierarchy needs in the financial terms. Never saw that before. That was cool.
Cool. Thank you. Well, very good.